Meanwhile, a rustic property in one of the Gold Coast's most sought-after suburbs is about to go under the hammer. The block of 4 units on Hale Street in Burleigh Heads has received interest from people wanting to renovate, as well as those looking to use it as an investment.
There's only 67 home sites in this pocket, and then to have 4 units on one title is extremely rare.
The home will go to auction later this month.
What a day we have had. Emily and I went down to Burleigh Heads today. We were looking along the Gold Coast for our next investment opportunity. Now, we've been talking about this on the channel for a little while and it's pretty exciting. We're looking at making a unit block purchase or a freehold house and land purchase up to around the $2 million price point. And that will take our portfolio up to around the $5 million mark. Now, make sure you stick around to the end of this video where I reveal our secret strategy to bidding at auctions and trying to secure the win. Now, the idea behind this next purchase for ourselves was to buy something that needed some work, some renovation, a way we could add value, and also have some strong cash flows to essentially allow us to have more choices in our life. So this purchase opportunity that we went to auction for today was a block of 4 units on a single title. Now, it needed some love and attention, the unit block. It was on roughly 400 and 405 square meters, and it was medium density residential. So it could have townhouses built on it up to 3 stories, or if an owner-occupier loved the location, which was great because it was only 300 meters from Burleigh Beach and the beach pavilion, then they could knock it down and build their own dream home. So essentially, we've been down to the property a couple of times before. We again went down there today and grabbed our paddle and signed up for the bidding. And there was lots of interest in the property, what looked like from both investors and owner-occupiers. The actual units themselves were pretty cool. So one was a studio and the other 3 were 1-bedroom units. The standard layout had a sunroom and a lounge space on the way into the unit. Then it had the bedroom off to one side and then a kitchen and bathroom off the back. Now, the unit block itself had an asbestos roof, an asbestos back shed, and asbestos laundry. So all the material on the unit block all appeared to be asbestos, even the walls as well. So in terms of knocking down, that was going to come with an additional cost, but we were planning on revitalizing the place and allowing the tenants to stay there and maybe increasing the rents because of the value and money we would spend on the property. And so we were looking around the $2 million mark for our own purchase price. We actually made a pre-auction offer on the property, which is well below where it ended up selling for. But we just wanted to test the waters and see if they were serious about selling prior to auction. But really, from what we saw today, the vendors made the right decision by holding off till the auction scenario to allow more demand and more heat to come into the situation and bid the price up. So all in all, we were going to renovate the project and potentially eventually let out one of the units as an Airbnb, maybe as an additional option. So myself, Emily, and my dad came down and we'd already pre-registered for the auction. We had a look through some of the units. There was lots of interest there. Family, some older investors, some baby boomers who were cashed up. Now, what ended up happening was the auction opened at $1.95 million by a keen bidder looking to set a quick stamp and a quick mark on the auction and try and get rid of a number of bidders in that situation, which definitely worked. There would have been at least 10, if not 15 registered bidders there. And in the end, it came down to 3 bidders, and unfortunately, we weren't one of them. So we were tapping out around the low 2s, and the property went up in $50,000 increments and then $25,000 increments from 1.95 up to 2 million and eventually up to $2.35 million. Now, that was between 3 key bidders, 2 on the phones who were interstate buyers, and 1 which appeared to be a local buyer looking to potentially knock down and build their dream home. Now, once the property had got to that $2.35 million mark, the auctioneer started calling 1, 2, 3, holding it for a pause and seeing if he could get any other bids. And eventually he passed the property to have a discussion with the owners who were there at the auction. The selling agent had a chat with the owners. They had a debate for a few minutes and then came back to the auctioneer and said that they were on the market and gave an opportunity for any other bidders to put in bidding increments around the $1,000 mark even. So that means someone could come in with a bid of $2,351,000 if they wanted to, but prior to that point, the auctioneer had only allowed $25,000 bids, which had worked in the auctioneer's favor and in the selling agent's favor to make sure the bid increments were at least $25,000 at each jump. Now, once that property had then come back from the vendor and the auctioneer was reopening it to the market for $1,000 bids, no one else was willing to bid on the property. It had really gone over where meaningful value was as an investment, and it was now an owner-occupier type purchase. So the auctioneer knocked down the hammer and the new owners had bought the place for $2.35 million. Now, when Emily and I ran the cash flows and looked at the numbers in detail, we could really see that the property wasn't worth paying much over $2 million in terms of the cash flow that it was going to generate, and even the after repair value on the property once we'd done the renovations. So we really were tapping out around that $2 million mark on a capacity side and on an investment, wearing an investment cap in terms of where the numbers made sense. Now, it's not a shock that the auction got emotional and heated and went over where we were expecting the property to sit. At the maximum, we'd expected the property to go for around the $2.2 million mark, but in the market that we're in at the moment, we can see why the property has sold for $2.35 million, and really an emotional purchase by that. Now, our big tip for bidding at auction is to try and take the heat out of the auction scenario. The auctioneer's desire is to drive up the price as quickly as possible and in as larger increments as possible. Now, this doesn't happen in every scenario, but for the most part, our bidding strategy works like this. Essentially, the idea is not to bid until the auctioneer has had the chat with the vendors and the property is on the market. Now, make sure, this doesn't apply to every situation, but the tip here is to wait for the auctioneer to say, this property is selling today and we are on the market, and when I drop the hammer, this property will sell. They will say that, the property was sold today quite often, but when they say the property is on the market, that's a clear indication that when they drop the hammer, they really mean that they're going to sell the property at that point. Otherwise, what will happen typically is the auctioneer will try and drive up the price as quickly as possible, then have a chat with the owners of the property, and then release whether the property is on the market or it still hasn't met the owner's expectations in terms of price. So we like to sit back in the bidding scenario, try and take as much heat and as much demand out of the auction scenario as we can, and then bid once the auctioneer clearly states that the property is on the market, and we know at that point that we're in with a good chance of winning the property. In this scenario, we are okay that we missed out on the property because it was well over what we were willing to pay, and it is what it is. Now, we're going to keep you guys informed as we go out on our search and look for this next big investment purchase. Instead of buying these bread and butter properties, we're going for a bigger purchase because we're looking to grow the portfolio quickly to that $5 million mark, and we have the capacity to make a purchase up to around that $2 million mark. So make sure you subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed this auction video. We'll definitely take you along to future auctions that we're doing for ourselves and potentially for our clients. And make sure you click this video over here if you want to see more videos on real estate, renovating, or financial freedom. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.